Good morning, everyone. Let me put my mic a bit closer. How's that looking? Hello, good morning. Welcome to week 2. Are you all feeling as good as I am about it? I'm going to go posit maybe no, since there are, let's see. Oh, actually, there's 150 people. It's a pretty low percentage still, but most people watch the lectures after they go live. Actually, I was looking at last week's lectures. They've been viewed over 6,000 times, and I'm going to guess that you all haven't been watching it on average 6 times. So I don't know what's going on with that. Maybe we're going viral on, I don't know what's going on. So we do need to be a bit weary that I suppose there is a chance that people not from COMP1511 are watching these videos. So if you see something in the chat doesn't look quite right, make sure if you don't see it picked up, make sure you let us know. We've got 2 tutors in the chat today to make sure that we're on top of it. But yeah, or maybe people just really want to learn programming as much as you all do. Or people from 1521 rewatching. Maybe you're right, Nikhil. Yeah, exactly. Okay, we have an awesome lecture today. As per usual, we've got Structs and Enums is what we're talking about today. These words might sound completely foreign to you, but don't let it scare you. They're sort of pivotal, important, but not too bad concepts that are really going to start to transform how you can write code and stuff like that. Michael, I don't think there are many people watching because there are only lectures tab in the week 2. Yeah, the website's a bit broken, but I put out an announcement with the URL to the lectures. So I'm hoping everyone got it. But if you've got friends and stuff that aren't sure, maybe let them know. Rosie, the slides are up. If you just click week 1 on the course website, you'll see all the links. And also we've just linked the slides in the chat. But yeah, there is something slightly wrong with the website that I'll fix up. I'll get that fixed up by tomorrow. So yeah, make sure you let your friends know. Yeah, I think what's happening, Nikhil, is that the video is popping up in, like I've been told by people that aren't taking the course that our videos are coming up on their YouTube recommended. So that's a bit scary, but it's okay. All right, we have a lot to get through today. I'm really excited for it. So I think we're just going to get straight into it. Yeah, you can just subscribe to the channel and then you get notified that way. All right. Oh yeah, some quick housekeeping, I suppose. Good point, Elvin said. Assignment 0, all the stages are now released. That means everything that you can and need to do for assignment 0 is available on the course website. So if you want to work a bit ahead, you can do that. If you want to stick to our recommended schedule, where you wait for the lecture content to go over the topics and then you do the assignment, you can do that as well. So it's all about flexibility here. It's all available. And I want to keep that going with assignment 1 and assignment 2, where we'll have like a recommended timeline that you complete the assignment on. However, it will be available if you want to work ahead. Amber, I was confused about the labs. This week's lab is the things going on last week. Yeah, that's right. So this week's labs will cover the content covered in last week's lectures, I believe. Roughly, that's the idea. Yeah, Cyril, I did unlist the video and then the URL we were using didn't work. So that's the solution. I need to rejig how we do the URLs and then unlist the video. Exactly right. Anyway, we're okay. All right. So yeah, in general, the lectures will introduce new concepts, and then after everyone's had a chance to attend and watch the lectures, that's when you'll get your hands dirty on those concepts. So we're sort of a week ahead of the tutorials and labs. So I think we're ready to go jump straight into it. All right. So week 2, lecture 1, Structs and Enums. What are we talking about here? Last week, we introduced COMP1511. We started looking at the C programming language. We wrote our first Hello World program. How exciting. Printf, scanf. So we learned how to write content to the terminal or to the shell and how to read strings into variables or into variables from the terminal as well using scanf. And if we're reading things into the terminal, that means we need to store it somewhere. So we had variables, and we just covered integers, doubles, and characters. So we learned how our programs could request memory from the operating system and could store different types of data in those different types of boxes that it requested. And we looked at how we could do some operations and if statements. So we actually did do a lot last week, and we're going to keep that going. So a quick recap, then we're looking at structs and enums. As always, the live lecture code can be found at this link. Again, the course website's a little bit broken. You have to go to week 1, and then you can access the live lecture code and the PDFs, but we will fix that up very soon. Okay, quick recap. So we have these relational operators or equivalency operators. So we can compare if two things are less than or greater than each other using these symbols here. Less than or equal to, we can tack on the equal sign, a single equal sign, to see if something is less than or equal to each other, greater than or equal to each other. Double equals is checking if something is equal. Don't confuse that with a single equals operator, which indicates an assignment statement. And then of course not equal to. So the exclamation mark generally just means not. So basically in C, you put two numbers on either side, or two expressions, and you're going to get back a 0 or a 1 depending on if it's false or true. So using these operators, we can compare things, and we can actually compare chains of things using the AND or operator. So in the first example, right, we can say, is 7 less than 15 and is 8 greater than or equal to 15? In that case, it's no, because the whole statement will return false because both conditions, because we have an AND statement here, both conditions need to be true, and that's not the case. So the whole statement will return false. However, the exact same statement in an OR, in this case, will return true because only one of the two sides needs to return true. Amazing Music says, so a single equal sign means make it equal, and the double equal sign means does it equal. That's pretty much right. A single equal sign is an assignment operator. It makes the thing on the left equal to the thing on the right. A double equal sign checks if they're both the same thing. It's a little bit annoying that the symbols are so similar, but they're doing completely different things. So good job, yeah. And of course, if we tack on a not operator, we get the result in the brackets, and whatever the answer, whatever the expression evaluates to, we not it, we flip it. Then we have scanf. We spoke about this last week. It gives us the ability to read things in from the terminal. We need to tell the C language what we want the user to be typing in here. So do we expect the user to be typing in a number, a double, a character, or some other data type that we haven't covered yet? The way we've been using scanf is a little strange in that we give it the type of thing we expect to read in and the variable we want to put it in, right? But scanf is also a function that returns something. And in this case, we're just jumping into some details here. We didn't actually talk about this last week, but scanf is returning the number of input values that are scanned. But we'll be talking more about this in the future, but it's just worth breaking down. But conceptually, we give it the type of thing we want to read in. We give it the variable of that type that we want to put what is read into. And of course, we have variables, right? We need to store things, so we need a variable to store things. Variables allow us to store data in the memory of a program. Because it's stored in the RAM of the machine, this is short-term memory. So once the program ends, or once even that function or scope of the variable ends, we lose that data. And C needs to know the type of the variable because it needs to know how much memory to ask the operating system for. So in the example below, you can see sort of roughly when I make an integer called age and I assign it the value 3, our program asks the operating system, hey, can I have, 32 bytes to store this number? I need to store this number. Integers can go up to some 2 billion values. Therefore, I need enough memory to store that amount of data. But when we ask for a string, for example, we might get a bit more memory so we can fit longer strings. Okay, and this slide is reused. There's not meant to be there. It was just a duplicate slide. Okay, so now we're on to... Okay, that was the recap. Do we have any questions or quick things we want to discuss about the recap? AR11 says, I had a video and I recommended saying you should be careful using scanf. Is there any validity? Yes, there is. It's not necessarily the safest operation to read text in from the terminal. There's a few things we can do to make it safer. In general, things go wrong with programs. One of the places where things go wrong is when we're dealing with user input, because there could be fraudulent or even someone could be... It's one of the ways that our programs can be vulnerable to different types of attacks, whether it be accidental or intentional. And scanf isn't the safest. It's a very bare bones way of reading text into the terminal, but in C, it's the best tool we've got. We'll teach you some ways to be a little bit safer, but other languages probably do it a little bit better. But there's no way around it in C, and it's okay in this case. Nikhil says, are we able to use string as a data type instead of char? Yes, but not yet. You can't access the lecture slides. I think we've been putting I think I've pinned the lecture slide URL. So you can just click that there. The slides PDF is pinned to the chat, Anubav, so you should be able to access it. Exploits. Yep. How do variables store memory, Satvik? How do variables store memory? Variables are memory. I think that's the way to think about it. If you've got a variable of a type, let's say integer, what that means is you've got some reference to the computer's memory, and you've got permission to read and write to that range of memory. So variables are memory. If you've got a variable of an integer, in this case, like over here, we have, and I shouldn't have done string there. Yeah, that's a good point. If we have an integer of age 3 here, we have access to some memory. We already have it. Okay. Are we good to move on? All right, let's move on. Okay, all right. So this is the first of today's 2 new concepts, which fall into the category of custom data types. So if we look again back at the slide, the C programming language comes with these native built-in data types, like an integer, like a character, like a double, and there's some others that we haven't spoken about yet, that allow us to store common types of data, like floating points, like characters, like integers, for example. But not all data fits into these categories. In programming, in C, sometimes we need to define our own types of data types. That might be a primitive data type that has a different amount of memory that's more bespoke to what we need. Or it might be a collection of variables that sort of model or represent a single entity. And that's structs, which we talk about in the second half of the lecture. And another thing we can do with custom data types is something called enums or enumerations. So what is an enum? It is a custom data type. So like you can use an integer, you can use your own sort of thing that we create to store some memory. and it describes a set of possible values in a programmer-defined category. So that's a very abstract sentence, but in effect, it's really simple. So as an example, if I asked you all right now to write a program, and I want your program to store the current day of the week when it runs. Maybe it reads it in from the user, maybe it has some other function to get it from the operating system, doesn't matter. But if I ask you to store the current day of the week, my question to you all, maybe I can even do a quick poll. What data type would you use to store the day of the week? So there should be a poll going now in the chat, hopefully. Oh, hold on. It says yes or no. I gotta end the poll. Okay, I'm not gonna do the poll. Just type it in the chat. Sorry. Type it in the chat. Yes or no. Come on. So Joshua says a character. Benjamin says a string. They're both decent answers. A character would be interesting because what do you do for Tuesday or Thursday? Right? Like, do you just store T for both? That wouldn't work. That would be confusing. Do you do A, B, C, D, E? Daniel says something interesting. You go int from 0 to 6. That would be 7 days. That's correct. Polka Bra says, these names are insane. Can you use 1 to 7? As an int. Array of characters, Advit says, that's interesting. That's basically like you're saying use a string. Joe, I think has maybe cheated a little bit and gone and looked at the lecture code maybe, or is just thinking ahead. So the point is, right, like let's say, I think the closest answer here, other than an enum that we haven't spoken about, is if we were to use an integer. That's a really good answer. And in reality, that's sort of what we're doing. The problem is 0 Monday or is 0 Sunday or there is no sort of logical or conceptual mapping from an integer to a day of the week, right? You could make some argument that, yeah, 0 is Monday, but some calendars start with 0 as Sunday. Like, we would need to write a comment or document somehow which integer number is Monday or Tuesday or Wednesday. Does that make sense what I'm saying? It's not intuitive that a 3 is a Wednesday. So if we want to check that the day is Wednesday, we have to check that the number's 3, but what if someone else gets confused or whatever? The other issue is that what happens if someone types the number 8? That's an integer. It's a valid value, right? Then I've got to do some logic to say, well, if it's over 7, don't look at it. But then you got to remember, well, actually, it should be over 6 because ints start at 0. Okay, you could say it's their problem, but it's our problem because we want to write good programs at scale. So this is a long way of saying enums help us solve this problem. So let's demo why enums are useful. So let's go over to my VLab that you can see here. I'm going to cd into public HTML, COMP1511, lecture code, week 2 now. How exciting. And I've got some code here, gedit. I'm going to do, which one is it now? Days of week, maybe 1. Not a good name that I've come up. An ampersand. Okay, that is the one I wanted. Now, hopefully, once again, you can all read this, no problem. Let me just make this a bit bigger. All right. So, maybe I won't go into it because I think we're all sort of, yeah, we can use comments. That's right. We could do that. But then you have to look up at 2 different things at the same time. So basically, look, if I wanted to store the day of the week, we're sort of saying the same thing. What do? I could make a string. I gotta stop saying strings, right? I could make an int, I suppose. Whoops. If it's Tuesday, we want to print lecture day. So I could say int day, day is equal to, so what's Wednesday? 0, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, 0, 1, 2. Let's just say day equals 2. If day is equal to 2, print the day is Tuesday with a \n, return 0, end that block. That looks somewhat okay. Oh yeah, print f, thank you so much. Let's go DCC. I called this, what did I call this? Days of week 1.c-o program. Is that all okay? That looks okay. And it should print out the day is Tuesday. Cool. But again, you can sort of see, yeah, I was meant to print lecture day. Yeah, good point. But you can sort of see that, like, it's not really logical that 2 is Tuesday. I might forget that, right? This is obviously a simple example, but you can sort of see what I'm saying. And I think you all understood it. Okay. So how can we use enums to improve the readability and define a custom data type in our code? So let's do exactly that. So what I can do is come up above main, above my functions, and define a new data type that doesn't exist in the C programming language. Oh yeah, good point. Yeah, that's not right. Thank you. Of course, it still worked in that example because it did return 0 at the end. I can define a custom data type, which is an enum. So I have to say, I want to make a new enum called week, let's call it weekdays, because it's going to represent the different days of the week that are available. And then the syntax for it is I do a pair of curly braces, and then I literally can type the possible values of the 7 days of the week. So I can say Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And that's it, basically. Put a space there, semicolon at the end, save. So now what I've told the language is that, hey, I want to define this enumeration that represents, I've made a new data type called weekdays that can store only these values. That's it. I can't store any other value in this variable. Anything else would be invalid. The compiler, the programming language, won't allow me to put anything else into a variable of weekdays. So then how would we transform what we do here? Let's delete this line. So we still want to say if it's Tuesday, print the lecture day, okay? So instead of making an integer, we're going to make an enum. Now, what type is it? It's a weekdays. So this is looking up here. And then we give it the name of the variable. And again, we can just call it day. There's nothing wrong with that. So make a new variable called day. And what type is it? It's my new weekdays enum, which means it can store only these values. So instead of assigning it to 2, I can assign it Tuesday. Just like that. No quotes. This isn't a string. It's a thing that your program knows about. It knows that Tuesday belongs to enums, or belongs to the weekdays enum. And then, rather than saying if the day is equal to 2, and again, what is 2? Maybe 2 is Tuesday. You can imagine that if this was in another file, I'd have to go look at it. But okay, instead of just putting 2, I can just say if the day is Tuesday. Print that it's lecture day. And then if I compile this, no errors, that looks really good. and I run that, we should see that it's lecture day. So we haven't really changed much. The program works exactly the same way. But again, if you compare this code, especially here, from the previous code, isn't this much more readable? It's so much clearer. Oh, is the day Tuesday? That no one's getting confused there. Whereas if the day is 2, you're right. Either I need to comment it or look it up or read it, read some reference. So, all right. So why is the enum definition outside of main? Because I might want to use it in different functions. It's like a global declaration of a data type. Just like an integer exists outside of your functions, right? Data types generally are more accessible than our functions because we want to use them in different areas. Okay, a few questions here. Why can't we just do if weekdays equals Tuesday? Weekdays is not a variable, it's the data type. So weekdays is like an integer, for example, or a character or a double. It's the data type. The name of the one I've asked for is a day. So is the enum referencing a variable name in a list? Pretty much exactly right. So we didn't need to do an integer. Yeah, that's exactly right. Okay, and also Noah's answering these questions. So enum weekdays is a custom data type, 100%. That's exactly right, Kasim. We've defined our own data type. It's an enum. We have to tell it it's an enum, but it's called weekdays. So we're saying here, make a new variable called day, and it stores a day of the week. Let me just put this on a new line. Coming from the weekdays enum. 100% Windows says, so right now weekdays is similar to an integer or double or character. Exactly right. This is here and here, our new custom data type. Exactly right. So Mitchell asks an interesting question. Sometimes when we submit code, it doesn't allow us to use global values or global variables. Will this be allowed? Yes, this will be allowed. This is not a variable here. This is not any memory here. This is the definition of the new data type. Okay, Polkabra asks another good question that I think will lead on to the next topic. How heavy on memory are enums? Great question. Basically, in C, enums, like weekdays below, are stored as integers. So basically, it's 32 bits. You start to pick up now that C stores a lot of things as integers. So you can imagine it is like saying it's an integer that can go from 0 to 6, but it's again, I need to put comments here. But because it's an enum, it's sort of limiting the potential values that it can store. You can't assign it, 7 or 8, for example. I actually don't know if there's a limit to enums. I don't know. There probably is. Well, I guess it would be maybe 2 billion, just like an integer. Amber says, can you try day equals Wednesday? I'm going to leave that to you to try. So you can do that. Yeah, if we miss your question, by the way, I saw some feedback on this. It's not intentional, obviously, just maybe type it again. They come quite quick. Okay, Angus, you ask another good question. How do we print the enum out. This is one of the limitations of enums in C. We can't actually print the label. I can't print that it's Tuesday. If I print, does anyone know what would happen if I printed out day? Yeah, you'd get the number. You'd get 2. Exactly right. So the value isn't for that. The value is that it's more readable code here. Less opportunity for confusion. Yeah, it would print the index. So this is, whoops. This is like 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So Tuesday is a 1, for example. And we're not going to mark you down, of course not, for efficiency. Okay. How would you scan in an enum? That's a great question. It depends on what you want to do. Yeah, Joe, that's a great comment. So enums are like cooler comments. Yes, the way I would say it is that like enums are self-documenting or self-commenting code. It paints its own picture about what it is. So the question about scanf is really good. It's probably the last thing we'll talk about for scanf, maybe. One sec. How do you read in a value to store into the enum? We can do it. So rather than just saying the day is Tuesday, we have a few options. We can say enter a number 0 to 6 to store the day of the week. Zero is Monday, 1 is Tuesday, etc. Don't forget my new lines. And then pretty simply, you could just scanf a %d, and you could actually put it straight into day because enums are integers. Yeah, I think that would basically do it. If I save that, if I made a mistake here, that looks okay. %d is correct. Oh, I need to do the ampersand here if I'm reading in. Nope, it's still telling me. I've not tried to do it. It might just work. It might be the error, the warning getting confused, but someone might catch up if I'm doing something wrong. If I put in a 1, there you go. That does work. 1 is lecture day. Yes, you could use the int value. Oh, I don't actually know what you're asking now, Prichelle, but you could read the enum as an integer, but I don't think that's actually what you're asking. Yeah, so Kazan, that's a good question. What happens if you input a number outside of 1 to 6? Let's try it. It just stores it anyway. There you go. It allows it to go in, but it knows it's not. Or for example, it's not going to work here. So they're not, like everything in C, it's not going to do a lot of magic to sort of help you, not make issues. All they're doing is assigning a label to a set of values to make the code more readable. Now, Jacob, you could use scanf and have the user type in like Monday, but you would need to be reading in a string to do that, and we haven't actually covered that. Okay. Yeah, and exactly right. Varun raises another great point. What you would really do is check that the number that they inputted is in the range, and if it's not, you spit it out. Satvik, how does it know that 1 is Tuesday? Pretty simply, they start at 0. So whatever the first one is, it's 0. The second one is Tuesday, so 1 is Tuesday. Okay. What are some other examples of when you would use an enum in our code? Anyone got any suggestions or some can think of some ideas for the types of data we might want to model this way? Adam says, why do we have to define the main function as an integer? This is sort of off topic, but while people are typing in what did I just do? While people are typing in the enum ideas, I can answer. Main is a special function. It's the entry point of the program. It returns an integer because the program needs to indicate whether or not it was successful or not, and 0 means that the program was successful. All right, we've got a lot of answers for this. Enums are not arrays, Daniel. So you can only, whoops, oh my God, why is it doing this? In an enum, you're only storing one day of the week. You're not storing multiple. It's just the set of possible values. Okay, strings of a guitar. Choose the difficulty. They're great examples. Timeline of a day. I don't exactly know what timeline means, but yes. Not really, I wouldn't say stats in a video. That might be more of a struct that we're going to talk about later. List of weather types. That's a good idea, like sunny, rainy, cloudy, something like that. That's also really interesting. Enums are special types which could be assigned one value. That's exactly right. Ice cream flavors. That's it. You guys are getting it. It's anywhere where you don't have a logical mapping where, you know, a 0, like, okay, as an example, anyway, you guys are getting it. But as an example, like the day of the month, you know, 0, 1, 2, 3, you would just use an integer for that because the third day of the month is very clearly the third day of the month. But some, exact seasons, summer, winter, spring, exactly. You guys are 100% getting it. And you only have one of those values when you create the variable. So Nickel puts it really nicely. There's no easy way to represent it in a numerical format, but there's a limited selection or category. A color palette. Yeah, you guys are crushing it. Awesome. That's enums. You don't need enums, right? Like enums don't allow us to do anything that we couldn't do with integers. They are just integers. But they help make our code more readable, more glanceable, and they self-document. It's really, this line is much more simple than if day is equal to 1. Well, not simple, but clear. Right? Okay. Let's go back here. That was meant to say, let's do a demo on why enums are useful, not structs. Okay, because we haven't spoken about structs yet. So that's all I've got for enums. Actually, we're surprisingly ahead of time, which is fine. What do we want to do? You guys tell me, do we want to go, maybe Tammy or Noah, could you set up a poll? Do we want to do the break now, 15 minutes early? Really, 20 minutes early. Or do we want to start talking about structs? Structs probably need a bit more time, so it doesn't hurt to start on structs a bit earlier, but we've got a bit of time anyway. The question is, do you want to start structs until 10, then have the break, or do you want the break now? Could someone, maybe Tammy, could you set up a poll just so we get the, proper democratic collection? Not a long break, a normal break. Can someone tell me if we're running a poll? Oh yeah, awesome. All right, I think unpin. Let me unpin that. Oh, it's actually quite close, but yeah, this is like the federal election. Will we swing break? Oh no, Structs is ahead now. Interesting. No, it's a conspiracy. This is frustrating. I didn't expect it to be 49-51. Maybe. Or you're all just very organized. I mean, I need to respect the poll. Look, it's only 15 more minutes. Let's the postal votes are coming in, and they swing Structs, as we all know. I'm going to end the poll, and I'm sorry everyone who wanted a break. I promise 10. I will only just. I'm not going to do the whole Structs. We'll just introduce Structs. Then we'll do the break, and just to tease the break people even more, I've got a Kahoot ready for the break. But you can go make your toast. You don't have to do it. All right, we're going to do Structs. Okay. So Structs are another form of custom data types, like Enums, right? So Enums let us make our own data type. In this case, we called our data type weekdays. Structs allow us to do the same thing, but it's not storing an enumeration, it's storing a structure. These are much more, I would say, much more important than enums. Much more used, much more useful. And actually they have, yeah, if you look at other types of programming languages, they sort of evolve and become even more useful. They're variables, right? Because it's a custom data type. That means it's a type of a variable. They're variables that are made up of other variables. Okay. So let's say we want to group some variables together to make a single structure. So let's say I want to store some information about a person, a user, okay? The user has a name, the user might have a user ID, the user might have an email address, right? We have a bunch of information that are related to a single concept. Does that make sense? So at the moment, let me close this. Do I have a structs program ready? I don't think I do. So gedit. I don't know what I've done here. Gedit structs. Let's call it 0.c ampersand enter. All right, int main return 0. Okay, that's all we need basically. So if I want to store a few different things about a user, I'm going to need to say, like, for example, you know, user age is an integer. I might need to say, let's say double height. For some reason, I need their height. What's another thing from a character, an int or a double? You know, car first letter of name. For some reason, I might need to store that. I'm not reading in or printing out, so I'm not going to include stdio just yet. So these three variables are related. They're grouped. This is my user. Yeah, first letter, first initial, something like that. If I wanted now a second user, what would I need to do? And so a double is a float. So, 170.45 centimeters. Like for example, it's not a whole number. Yes, exactly right. I would need to make a whole new set of variables. And that's exactly, okay, you guys are spot on. Like, what do I call it? I'd have to go, well, all right, I got another integer called user age 2. I've got a double height 2. Do you start to get the idea that this is a bit cumbersome? Whenever we find ourselves having to retype a lot of things, it should trigger a warning sign in our minds. There's probably a better way of doing this. Because if you imagine, what if a user was made up of 20 things and I had 5 users? I would have to have 100 variables, quick maths. I'd have to have 100 variables. My program would be like hundreds of lines. It would be really annoying, right? Do you agree? That would be annoying. So what we want really is a way to make a new data type that is a user. And the user inside it has an age, a height, and the character. So all I can do is just what I want to do is just say my user, user 1, and that's it. And that's my whole user. So the way we can do this in C, Oh, yes, you're right, Kushik. I need to shamod. Can I just do everything in the current directory? Can someone try now refresh the code? Does that work now? God, I'm choking. Did that work? Can someone confirm? Awesome, cool. Oh my God, I'm choking water. So I want to be able to create a user or something that stores a collection of variables. There might be 3, it might be more. And this is really important in programming. The way we solve problems in code is to model the real world, because that's how we solve real world problems. And structs are the way that we can do this. So they help us organize related but different components to one structure. It's a collection of different data types. So we have a question here. What are some examples of real life where we have some things to go together to make a single component or structure or record or something like that? So I gave the example of a user, which you can imagine, a user ID, a username, an email address, a physical address, a mailing address. There could be lots and lots of things. Are there any other examples that we can think of? Maybe from programming, or maybe just, think about your day-to-day. A game system with multiple players, exactly. So the players would be a struct. So I don't know what you mean, Daniel, exactly, but I wouldn't say this is where a set of characters would be represented. Bank account details, yeah, you're an account, that's a common one. A form, that's a good one. A resume, that's a good one. A set of preferences, items in a room, that's a good one. Course info, that's a great one. Yeah, you guys are getting it. And the things that make up these structures are different. They're different things, right? You might have an integer, you might have a double, data harvesting from Facebook. Yeah, exactly. You might have an integer, you might have a double, you might have this, you might have that. We don't know what'll be in it. We could even have other custom data types, like other structs or other enums, for example. So there's 3 steps to create a struct, just like an enum. We define the struct outside of main, we declare the struct, and we initialize the struct. Very simple. Steps 2 and 3 here are very similar to any variables. We declare the variable and we initialize the variable. The only step with custom data types is that we need to define that custom data type. Sam, you ask a great question. Is a struct just like an object in OOP languages? Structs evolved into objects when OOP was designed. Yeah, I would say that's correct. But they're different from, and we're going out of scope here. But they're different from objects because they don't have methods. They don't have functions on them. Only data. Coordinates is a great example, Davide. That's what we'll talk about in a moment. What does it mean to be inside or outside of main? This is inside of main. Remember before I did like enum, weekday. This is outside of main. It's on top of, it's literally not inside the brackets of main. That's all we're saying here. So it's defined globally. Okay. Let's have the break now. And then when we get back, we will actually declare structs. Does that sound good? How would the program know to run the code if it's outside of main? It's because we're declaring the type of variable globally for the program. We'll talk more about that another time. Okay. I'll talk more about the main thing. Yes, so we have a Kahoot. What do I have to do here? Do I just click this link? Oh, it's got the answers. Start. Is this right? I don't exactly know what settings. What did Tammy say? Players guessed classic mode. Why only 10 players? Oh, okay, classic mode. Oh, shivers. Is it really going to limit it to 10 people? It's going to suck if it limits it to 10 people. Oh no, 13. We're in. We're good. We're good. I can even get the music going. Should also probably move my camera. Kahoot updating? Oh my god, I've never done a Kahoot this big. Yeah, you should hear the music now. Thank you, Tammy, for organizing this. Oh, I'm sharing the chill music. I see, okay. Is that better? Yeah, there should be music now. Oh yeah, the latency might be fun. Yep. Tammy and Noah, I expect you to win. Yeah, we're gonna bring the Kahoot server down. Let's do it. And if you do, yeah, we'll do a bit of a break after the Kahoot as well. How many people are in the stream? there's more people in the Kahoot than in the stream. Interesting. All right. Are we going to get started? Let's... If you beat the mods, we get to... Yeah. If you beat the mods, you become a tutor. They get fired. Okay, I'm gonna just start it. These are starting to seem like scams now. I'm gonna lock it. I'm gonna start it. You're gonna have to be super quick, I think, because it's a bit quick. Can I change that? I don't think I can. Do I click next now? Yeah, I need to... If I restart it, will it fix it? Too quick? All right, let me try it. Let me end it. I need to edit the quiz. Oh, goodness. It was really quick. It was really quick. Give me a second. Joe. I see. Give me a second, everyone. Go make a coffee or whatever. Am I muted? Oh, I'm not. Okay, sorry. Go make a coffee. Go get your toast or whatever it is you want to do. I'll set up the Kahoot. Maybe we can do it at the end. I'm making it a bit longer. Okay. Whoops. Hello, I'm back. Let's try this again. We've increased the time for each question. We're probably going to go way over, so maybe we won't do every question, but that's okay. We can do more at the end or something. Maybe we need DMCA stream-friendly K-pop for next week. If anyone can find a link, we can try that. I might put this up here. Is that safe there, hopefully? All right, we'll stop it at 150 players. Remember, always keep the names and things UNSW friendly. Yeah, TMCA will come after us. Don't you worry, Nickel. They try. They try. The assignment specs are on the website. The course website. We can get a link in the chat, I'm sure. Ooh, Nutella toast. That sounds good. That sounds really good. Now I want some Nutella toast. All right, is this slowing down? I reckon I'm going to give it a go. We're good to go? No one's updating Kahoot? All right, for the sake of time, let's do it. Put the music back. That was not 30 seconds, was it? What just happened? Oh my goodness. But it says 30 seconds. Let's just try the next one. It literally says 30 seconds. You can see it here. That sucks. Oh no, this is okay. Was that okay? That was okay. Sorry, relax, okay. All right, congratulations everyone who got that. I'm gonna be honest here. I don't think that is not correct. Let's just ignore that question. It's not correct. You don't need to include stdio for your program to compile. Yeah. Apologies if you wrote this, Tammy, but yeah, anyway. Hopefully other questions are more correct. Okay, this is better. How do I print a new line? Yeah, you don't need it. You need it to use printf, sure, but you don't need it to compile a C program. But there was no correct answer there, so you're fine. You're fine. Okay, a few people, so what do people do? They put the slash the wrong way. That's a fair enough mistake. I feel like that's okay. They forgot the F. Almost no one did that, and then most people did the correct answer. Yeah, so it's backslash for character escape. And it's printf in C. You just gotta remember those two things. Jake Renzeller. Goodness. Okay. I have a hello.c file. I want to compile it into a program. Which command do I use? Oh, this is a good one. You've seen me typing it in the lectures. There should be Kahoot music. Oh no, again, I gotta keep forgetting to pause this. Sorry. Sorry. Okay, yep. Oh, this is actually quite good. Everyone did quite well here. It's the compiler, DCC, the C file, output to the program name. Oh, this is quite funny. It's not me. It's not me, I promise. I'm off stream, just destroying. Which of the following is not an integer? Which of the following is not an integer? Damon, in C, why is it printf instead of print? Because it's called a formatted print. Because you know how we use like the %D or the %C? That's the format. Is it print function, Noah? I thought it was print format. I think it's print format. Because it's a format print, not a normal print. Okay, which of the following is not... Okay, everyone got this one. That's, okay, pretty straightforward. Whoever's playing Jake Renzella is killing it. Which of the following is a double? I feel like we're all going to smash this one as well. Although there could be some contention here. I could see some argument. Maybe. I really want some Nutella toast now. Yeah, well done, 17.0. Again, not many people did other answers. A double is a floating point, so it's 0.0. Yep. Let's do one more, and then it'll be... Let's get... Someone's got to overthrow Jake Renzella, which is the logical OR operator in C. Logical OR. Nickel thinks lots of people are going to get it wrong. Yeah, I didn't think people would either. Very good job. Double pipe is logical OR. Does anyone know what a single OR is? A single pipe? Fat fingers. Oh, come on. One more. We've got to dethrone Jake Renzella. How do I check what directories and files are contained within my current directory in the terminal? Yep, Cyril's got it. It's a bitwise OR. How do I check which directories and files are contained in my current directory in the terminal? List ls make dir cd. Almost all. Bash commands. Yeah, these are maybe too easy. All right, I think we're good to leave it there. Let's see, did we overthrow Jake? No, not quite. It's close though, it's close. All right, let's end it. Actually, maybe I can just pause it. Or, I don't know. Let me mute this. Hide this. Okay, that's that. Yeah, you better believe it. Okay, minimize that. Yes, that is not where it should be. Oh, I see what happened there. 5th place is really good. Rigged script. Yeah, it's not a democracy. That's what I think. All right, let's minimize that. And we get back to it. All right, so let's have a quick recap. What we want is to be able to model structures of groups of different variables or different data types. So we need to learn how to define our own structs. Now, structures are just another variable that get made, so we need to define what the name of that variable type is and how it's constructed. All right, so I think we have an example here of a super common struct called a coordinate, or a point 2D, it's sometimes called. So this is a simple struct that has, is something wrong? Oh, okay, yes. I think that's what's wrong. Okay. This is a really simple struct, but it's actually a very common struct. I've written a game engine before, and the struct, the point2D or the coordinate struct, is used everywhere. It's super common. And all it allows us to do is store a pair of integers which represent an x and a y, right? You can sort of imagine why that's useful in a single point2D variable. So how do we actually define this new struct? Well, we use the struct keyword, similar to how we use the enum keyword. Then we give it the name of our custom struct, which is in this case, we'll call it a coordinate. And then a pair of curly braces with the sub variables that make up that struct. In this case, and these are just standard int declarations, int x coordinate, int y coordinate. So let's do this in our code. All right. So just like we did with the enums, we define the struct outside of main. There was some confusion here. Why do we do this? Basically, if we had our int main, let's say we had void print instructions. You've seen this before, right? Okay, I forgot to, sometimes we can put that void there. If I don't think we can even do this, but if I declared my enum inside of main, it wouldn't be available in this procedure. That's not what we want. So we declare our types above the definitions of the functions. Don't forget hash include. Yep. I can't tell if Josh, you might be joking, or you might not be. We only need to include standard IO if we're using printing and scanning. We will use those. I'll add it when we need it. It's just how I'm going to operate. Okay, so let's look back at our reference. Struct coordinate. So I type struct. I'm actually going to call it a point 2D. That's what I've always called these types of structures. A curly brace, and that's it. That is declaring a struct that has nothing in it at the moment. What do I want to have in it? An integer. I'm going to just call it x, and an integer, I'm going to call it y. And a semicolon after the final brace. That's important to not miss. So I have a question for everyone. Maybe could we get a poll set up? Actually, I can just do it. It should be okay. Oops. Okay, I've just put a poll in the chat. Right now on lines 1 to 4, I've made a struct that contains, or is defined to contain two integers, one called x and one called y. So my question to you all is how much memory right now in this program have I asked the operating system for? Yeah, sure. 1,000 sub keyboard revealed. I got to figure out some metric, Maybe if you all beat last year's assignment 0 average, we'll do a keyboard reveal. All right, let's end the poll. The number's not changing. All right, what does everyone think here? Let's get the poll results. Okay, 8% say no memory, 13% say more than 64 bits, 21% say 32 bits, and 56% say 64 bits. Really interesting. Really interesting. This is what the results were. Now, I can understand why a lot of people have put 64 bits. I'm assuming your reasoning is that, well, an integer is 32 bits, so 2 integers is 64 bits, right? 21% say 32 bits. You might have some reasoning for that. I'm not sure what it would be. 13% say more than 64 bits. You might be saying, okay, well, it's 64 bits to just store these two values and maybe a little bit more for some overhead or something. And only 8% say none. So only 8% of you are correct. What a plot twist. Why have I not requested any memory yet? I guess only 8% of you got the correct answer, so maybe I shouldn't be asking. What we've done here is define a new data type. We've defined a data type. Okay, someone's got it. Who just said that? Oh my God, the chat's going nuts because you're all... Daniel Berry, we haven't created a variable yet. That's exactly right. We have not made a .2d variable. We have not gone to the operating system in our nice Sunday clothes and said, please, Mr. Operating or Mrs. Operating System, can I please have enough data to store 2 integers? We have not done that yet. All we've done is said, hey, when I make a .2d, I will need to ask for 64 bits of storage. I will need to, but I haven't made any yet. I don't have a variable yet. This is why this declaration is okay to not be in main. It's not storing anything. I've not asked for any memory. That means I don't have a global variable. So for all of you asking, why is this allowed to exist outside of main? Because it's not a variable. It's the definition of a variable. It defines what a new .2d will look like when we make them, but we have not made one yet. Does that make sense? It's like saying, this is what a .2d can and will look like when I decide to make one. So this is the definition. I'm defining what a struct is. I'm not making one yet. All right. To declare a struct, this is the declaration where we ask for the memory in our Sunday best. We do it inside of main so that it's a local variable because we want our variables to be local and not global. And we simply say struct and then the name of the struct. So in main, I can say, I'm going to make a new struct. I'm going to call it, I'm not calling it that. I want a .2d struct, right? So I want 2 integers called x and y. And I'm going to name it, I can name it anything. Something that's commonly used for a .2d is the mouse position. So the mouse position, if you think about it on the screen, you can probably see it moving around here, is actually just 2 integers, the distance from the left of the screen and the distance from the top of the screen, depending on whatever the structure is. So it's like 10 pixels, 10 pixels. So if that was 10, 10, I might be top left, right? That could be 10, 10 around here. At this moment, now I have asked for 64 bits. Very good. Yeah, very good AR. All right. What's 2D? It's two-dimensional, two dimensions. It's a pointer in 2 dimensions, so an X and a Y. I've called it point2D. This is my name. I could call this, you know, the Renzella struct. It doesn't really matter. So the struct itself doesn't ask for memory. We need to be more explicit, Nicole. The definition of a struct doesn't ask for memory. The declaration of the struct asks for memory. And this is the definition. Okay. Let's go back to our slide for a second. So we've declared our struct. How do we now initialize the struct? So this is a good question. You got your slides there for reference if you want to go back to them, but we can break it down ourselves. Let's move this down a little bit. We've defined our struct. We've declared our struct. Now I've got a problem. How do I assign, like, let's say I want to assign 10 and 10 into this struct. How do I do this? Because so my variable is called mouse position. You know, what do? How do I get 2 numbers into this single container? So William Kennedy's got a great answer. Looks good to me. That water's empty. I don't know what I'm doing. Jessica Zhu is saying, why is it 64 bits? Well, because an integer is 32 bits and we've got 2 integers. So 64. Joe says, I don't know. I feel like we're going to have a shortcut. And then a few people are guessing it. So David, I'm not asking how to read it in from the terminal. I'm just saying if I want to assign it 10 and 10, how do I do that? A few of you have already got it. We don't say that the mouse position equals something. We need to assign each of the X and Y variables individually. So I can just say, and the way we do this is with this period or the dot. So it's saying, go look inside of the mouse position and access the X field and assign it whatever I want. I'm going to assign it 10. And I'm going to do mouse position dot Y is equal to 20. So now I've stored, stored 10, 20 in my mouse position. Yep, Dwayne, that's exactly right. I've just realized your name's probably definitely fake. So if our ints were named something different, we would do whatever the name is. That's exactly right. Whatever this name is, we are using here. If this was a point 3D and we had a Z, we would just say mouse position.z. Right? There's no magic going on. There's no magic going on. It's just looking up your definition and assigning the individual. It is your real name. I apologize. Sorry. It's so hard to tell on YouTube. We're just looking up our definition and assigning the subfields to be the appropriate value. Someone asked, is there a shortcut? In other languages, there are. So you can sort of do it on one line. I'm going to ask Noah and Tammy if there is a shortcut. And by shortcut, I mean, can we assign X and Y on one line? But I don't think we can. But I might be wrong. And Noah and Tammy are going to tell me. Tell me. You can do X, Y. Well, you know what? In this case, when things like this happen, what we do is we Google structs C assign multiple values in one line. How to assign multiple values into a struct at once. We want to make sure that this is the C programming language. C, C++, that's okay. But I can't do this. Okay, so, oh wow. In modern versions of C, but not C++, you can also use a compound literal. We're not going to do any of this stuff. It looks like it's possible. That's C++ 11, we don't want that. Yeah, I'm going to, look, it might be, that was C++ actually, not C. I would say let's not worry about it. However, actually, I will say that there are ways we can make this nicer. We're just going to talk about it in a future lecture once we have functions that can return values. So let's pause on that for a few weeks. I promise you, I will show you a really nice way of doing it in a single line where we can assign multiple values. It is possible, we will do it. We have to write code to do it, but we'll talk about it in the future. Okay. So here's a little recap. We define, we declare, and we initialize. That's basically what we've just done. Okay. We can see this in action, structs intro. This is referring to some code. But we can just keep going on with the example here. Okay. Now let me quickly look at chat. This works. Okay, look, this is sort of out of scope, but it looks like you can do well, that should be 2D space mouse position equals X. The X will be 10, the Y will be 20. That's some cool syntax there. But don't focus too much. So sometimes in programming, we have, I defined, I declared, I initialized. That's funny. Sometimes in programming, we have what are called syntactical sugars. This is an example here, right? We don't need it, but it's nice. Does that make sense? It's a syntactical sugar. It's a nice additions that just maybe sort of help us reduce the amount of lines of code we need to write. But I think let's not worry about, I'll leave it, but let's not worry about it. Oh yeah, 0.2D, yeah, that's fine. But also I'm gonna get rid of that because it'll confuse our example here. Okay, so let's apply some of the things we've been doing so far in the course to this struct. So for example, scanning maybe and printing, let's say that. So now that I want to print, I'm going to go ahead and include std.io.h. My Siri just got triggered for some reason, ignore that. First of all, why don't we print the X and Y? So I want to print. Now, I've got a question for everyone. Can I just print the whole mouse position struct at once? Can I just print mouse position? Why not? So everyone's saying no, 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 nah. But why not? Robert, that sugar is declaring, it's actually doing all three. It's declaring, assigning, and doing the compound initialization. Some of you saying yes, some of you saying probably. I can tell everyone's very cautious from the 8% incorrect. Yeah, It's not a supported type in printf, so that's exactly right. The C programming language doesn't know how to print out a point2D. It's a custom data type. We have to tell it and break down how to print this custom data type. So how are we going to do that? Well, we give the format string. We're printing integers, so we use %d for a decimal integer. Actually, we're going to print out 2 integers because our point2D is a struct which defines 2 integers. So when I print out a point, this point2D, I'm going to tell it, hey, I want to print out an integer and a comma and an integer and another integer. And to make it nice, I might say x is this, y is this, with a \n. All right. What am I going to pass into it? I need to pass in the first value, which is the x. I saw some of you already got this in chat. This mouse position.x is going to be mapped to this x %d. So what's the second thing I'm going to print out? Obviously, it's going to be the mouse position.y and a semicolon at the end to end the statement. Okay. Let's get rid of all this. Let's compile. DCC. What did I call this file now? Structs 0.c output to program. Let's override program. All right, I'm getting an error here. What is this saying? A member reference int is not a struct or a union. Okay, so I've accidentally typed a period instead of a comma there. Interestingly, what it was trying to do was it thought that x was another struct, or it thought that I thought that x was another struct. And I was like, hey, no, it isn't. All right, let's compile again. Okay, no errors. That looks good. Let's run program. Look at that. X and Y are getting printed out with the values 10 and 20. Our values are 10 and 20. So in a single variable called mouse position, we can store 2 values and we can actually print them out. So really, it's if you don't overthink it, mouse position.x is just an integer, and everything that you use an integer for printing or scanning, you can just use mouse position.x. Everyone caught the comma. Sounds, yep, that's well done. Itswa says you can define a printf handler. That's what I was referring to when I said we'll talk about it in the future. I will never do something in, yeah, that's true. Yeah. All right. So my question to you then, how would I scan into mouse position.x? Oh, I was just talking about something. Don't worry about it. How would I, instead of assigning the values like this, how could I scan in? Scan them individually. That's exactly right. We can type some code into the terminal, into the comment, sorry. Okay, let's try this. Jacob's put some code here. I'm going to paste it. So we'll keep these 2 assignments, and then we'll override the x position. Now this is actually missing it's actually missing 2 things. Can anyone tell me the 2 things? And actually, so far everyone has made these 2 mistakes, so it's nothing on Jacob, but what are the 2 things that this is missing? There we go, Daniel Berry's coming in clutch. The ampersand and the semicolon, exactly right. So all of our statements in C, we need to end with semicolon. That's an easy one to forget. Everyone's going nuts. Okay. Yep. The other thing, when we're reading into a variable, we need the ampersand. We need the ampersand. We will talk more about what that means when we talk about pointers in correct detail in the future. But for now, think of it as we need to treat this variable as like a read, in a read format. That's not exactly correct, but we're just going to gloss over it for now, for good or for worse. All right, so we're going to read in. Now, if we're doing a scanf, it's also probably good to do a printf to say, please enter a new mouse x chord, oops, and then a \n with a semicolon. All right, let's compile this. First, let me clear the terminal, go back to my compiler command. Let's call it no errors. That looks good. Doesn't mean we have no runtime errors, but we have no compile time errors. I write program. So it comes through, it starts at main, it declares the struct, it assigns it 10 and 20 to x and y. It then says enter a new coordinate, does the scanf. I'm going to do 50. I hit enter, and look at that. My x is 50 and my y is still 20. Cool. All right. We have another 15 minutes. What I want to do next is actually extend our struct. At the moment, it's just got 2 variables, but there's no reason it has to be at 2, and there's no reason they both have to be integers. And it might be nice, actually, I'll slow down a little bit so that if anyone wants to write this code themselves locally, you should have enough time. Hopefully you've been doing so, but you should have enough time. We still have another more than 15 minutes for you to write this code yourself and to get compiling. So I'll give everyone a few minutes to get caught up with this code the way it is. Now, what we might do, why don't we do this? Let's think of a new struct that has 2 integers and something else. Alyssa says, if we do the scanf, can we just skip line 16? Yes, that's sort of correct. We assign it to 10 and then we immediately override it. But sort of yes, sort of no. It's always funny when I see people retract their messages. Let's see, anyone got any ideas for 2 integers and another thing? Maybe a float, a double? So it won't be a point2d. Yeah, all right, player name. I'm just trying to avoid strings though, that's the only problem. Score, level. Okay, actually, I've got a good idea. I've got an idea. All right, this is a good one. I'm excited. Rather than it be a mouse point2d, or rather than it just be a generic point2d, let's make it a cursor, like a mouse cursor. Oops, I can't type. A mouse cursor. A mouse cursor is a point2d, so it's going to have an int. It's going to have a y. It's also going to have an enum, which is the cursor type, which is going to be an enum, which could be pointer. What are some other ones? There's the grabber. You know, like the different shapes that what's the one that looks like an eye? What do we call that one? I know one's pointer. One's called grabbing, not grabber. These are the actual browser ones. Okay, one's called resize. That's enough. Crosshair, sure, we'll do that. Like, we're still defining these. These are our own types. The spinning wheel of death, the beach ball from the old Mac OS. Okay, exactly. So I've got, this is really cool. I've got an enum, which is the cursor type, and it can be up to 4 values. A pointer, the grabbing hand, the resize hand, and the crosshair cursor. So these are the potential values for our enum. Another question to everyone, have we declared any memory here? Okay, everyone's learned. Everyone's learned from last time. Very quick learners. Yeah, no, we're just defining what this enum could be. But the really cool thing, and I might get the syntax wrong here, but we can put our enum in our struct. Oh, and then the name cursor. Yeah, not following that whole exactly right. I can say that my mouse cursor has an int x, an int y, and a cursor type, which is just the name of the cursor. And I'm just going to double check the syntax for this. I think it's right. I don't know, Robert's saying no. I don't know if he's like no in shock or, oh, you're answering no. I'm going to guess, yeah, okay. Yeah, I don't know either if there should be this enum here, but we're going to find out together. In fact, we can compile this now and see if we get an error. Okay, we do have an error. Variable has an incomplete type. Struct point to D. Struct point to D mouse position. Oh, it's because I renamed the struct, that's all. Good catch, everyone. So I renamed the struct. I need to tell it I'm renaming the struct. I compile that. Okay, I get no errors. That actually works. Okay. Now, interestingly, even without changing any of the assignments, this should all just work exactly the same. Okay, it's going to ask me for the number. It's going to print out the 50 and the 20. But it does have this enum in it. We've just not read it and we've just not written to it. So we can actually, we can do this and we can say, well, the mouse position, and this isn't mouse position now, I guess. Let's call this mouse, because it's not just the position anymore. The mouse, what's the name of my enum field in the struct? What am I putting after the period here? To access that enum. So Daniel says cursor, Requity says cursor. Okay, you guys are absolutely killing it. Yes, the name of the enum that I declared here is cursor. The type is cursor type. So I'm just going to use cursor. And I can assign it, well, I want my mouse to be a pointer. Done. So now in this one struct, I have an int x, I have an int y, and I have this a second custom data type, don't be sorry, called cursor, which is a cursor type. What's a cursor type? It's an enum that can be the pointing, grabbing, resizing of the crosshair. Let's not do the scanf, but I'll leave it in there for reference. And we just print x and y. Now, how do we could just very simply print %d here, and then give it, and then this is not. mouse.cursor. Okay, what's it going to print? Does anyone know here? Jerry says, why is it pointer not 0? Remember, the whole value, the whole point of enums is that we get to use the label name and not the index. Yeah, it's going to print 0. That's exactly right, because cursor is referencing the 0th. Why is my terminal getting really annoying with gedit? Anyway, let's recompile that. Let's run that, and I should get that 0 here. In fact, I could, I could do something like this to make it nicer. Whoops, I didn't compile it. There we go. X20 pointer type 0. We have another 8 minutes, so I might as well sort of keep going and talk about how we can sort of make this a bit nicer. So we could do something like, oh, that's probably okay. Maybe actually, let's see. Let's say, well, first of all, let me go back to our slides and make sure I've not forgotten anything. Okay, that's actually the end of the content. That's good timing. So remember, if you've got any questions on this stuff, you can go to the forum. If you have any admin related questions, you can ask cs1511 at cc.unsw.edu.au. That's the end of the slides. Cool. Alrighty. If you set mouse.cursor to equal 0, would it print the word cursor instead of 0? No, it's going to print 0 only. It's just a label in the code. We could do the Kahoot. We could, how's everyone's brain? Is everyone on top of what we've spoken about today? Or is everyone at capacity? Because I could blow your minds a little bit more. Or we could just do a Kahoot. So Kahoot or capacity? You're on top of it, but you kind of want to sleep. Well, I'm not going to run over the lecture time. We've only got 5 more minutes. All right, blow minds. We could do we don't have time for a poll. You're going to rewatch the lecture for sure. That's an excellent idea. Bump up our views, please. Thank you. All right. I'm going to do it. Let's do it. All right. No Kahoot. We can do it next time. What I want to talk about is that our custom types are very, very flexible. We've got 5 minutes to do this, so I don't want to get it wrong. Remember, we had this point 2D struct, which could store an int x and an int y. This point 2D struct, you can imagine, would be useful for a lot more things than just the mouse position. The windows are also point 2Ds, right? Because it's like the X and Y position of the window, where it starts. So these are very useful structs that we could define and use sort of anywhere. So I don't necessarily want my own X and Y in the mouse cursor struct. What I can do here is say, well, in my mouse cursor struct, I've got my enum, which is the cursor type, and a struct, which is the point 2D. So in my struct, I can contain another struct, which is this reusable point 2D component, which means I can't just do mouse.x because there is no x in my mouse cursor struct, is there? There's no x. So how do I access? I do still want to access this x identifier. How do I do it? Well, if we think about it, our mouse cursor contains, oh, I didn't give it a name here. I'm going to call it the position. Our mouse cursor struct contains the position. So I can do dot position. The position struct contains the x, so I can do the x. Now, my mouse struct contains a position which contains an x, so mouse.position.x. Maybe it's not blowing your mind, but I mean, you can sort of see how this is quite... I'm just going to do this. you can see how we can make these nested structures more than just one level deep. So of course I can do this here as well. The X and Y is going to be 10 and 20. So the only top level things in my mouse cursor is the point 2D and the cursor type. The point 2D is the X and the Y. So I can say the X and the Y is like this. Okay, we've got to fix this up here to be position. Excuse me, this is my voice. Position.y. The cursor is still the same. So if we compile this, oops, I forgot my semicolon here. This is what it's telling me, expected a semicolon after the struct. If I compile this, no errors. I run this, and you can see it's all working exactly the same. My X is a 10, my Y is a 20, and the cursor type is still exactly the same. Nodes, yeah, maybe you're thinking ahead there, Leon. You can start to see now we're actually creating these models and these structures that represent sort of real world hierarchies of data. And that's really exciting. I think it's really exciting. I have a question for everyone. Why is this better than having the X and Y directly in the mouse cursor? And like better is in quotes, air quotes. And, yeah, you might not want to nest your structs that much, but there's nothing stopping you. Yeah, Joe, you've 100% got it. You've obviously done some programming before, Joe Lee. We can use that X and Y exclusively somewhere else. Gabrielle's also got it. We can use point2D outside of mouse cut. You're all yeah, big brains here. This point2D is a useful struct that we can use in other places. Therefore, by having its own definition, it's reusable and it's usable in the struct mouse cursor, which also needs it. So it's like more decomposed and more broken down. It's clearer hierarchy, and it lets us create functions in the future. We'll talk about this. It lets us create functions that know how to deal with a point2D, that don't quite yet know, that don't need to know how to deal with a mouse cursor, for example. So it lets us, it's more modular. That's exactly right, Damon. It lets us write more reusable, modular, flexible code. That only holds true if point2D is a useful structure as its own thing. And in this case, that is the case, right? Point2Ds are useful structures. We'll end the lecture on a poll that Tammy's just running up now. Yeah, Nicole, 100%. Like that's exactly right. Nicholas said, so that means we could use the struct point2D within the mouse cursor struct, and also in, for example, some window struct. Don't forget the semicolon. Struct point2D position. Exactly right. You can see now I've written less code, whereas before I would have had to do an X, a Y, and change it. Exactly right. Whew. So structs, I find, sometimes trip up a lot of students. Really what I'm getting from the chat, and not everyone types in the chat, so it's not necessarily a good demonstration, but I think you're all sort of getting on top of it a little bit. You might need to rewatch the lecture, that's okay. Tammy, how are we going with our poll? Yeah, we could also use mouse cursor in the struct window. It's not a great example, but we could do it. Cool. So here's the question. When we declare the struct, so this isn't the trick question, when we declare the struct, how many bits do we expect to be in it? Let's give everyone a bit of... 8 bits in a byte, that's correct. All right, the numbers are stabilizing. That should have been bits. Yeah. That should have been bits, but let's actually see. Is the correct answer there? Okay, I think the correct answer is, okay, well, that's all right. I think we're okay. Let's end the poll. So, okay, so the question is how many bytes are in the struct? It's actually more tricky than I expected to the question be. Let's first do it as how many bits are in the struct first. So this struct mouse cursor has a .2d position which contains 2 integers. An integer is 32 bits, so that's so far 64 bits. Then we have this cursor. The cursor is an enum. We mentioned that an enum is an integer, which is 32 bits. So it's 64 plus 32. So what's that? 32 times 3 basically is 96 bits. However, so it's 96 bits, but the question technically said bytes, so we need to divide by 8. So 96 divide 8 is 12 bytes, which would technically, either way, the answer was none of the above. So somehow we all came back to be correct there. So what did people say? 54% none of the above, that's correct. 21% said 32, that's not correct. 16, you're close, but not correct, technically, and 4. So yeah, a lot of people were probably technically right in the poll, but unless you were thinking either 96 bits or 12 bytes, you weren't exactly right. But the way to calculate it is really simple. You just break down the struct into the native types that we know their size. .2d is 2 integers, 64 bits. An enum is an integer, 32 bits, 96 bits. All right, anyway, that's just a bit of fun trivia. It's already 5 past, so the lecture's over. Thank you all so much. I was really happy with how that went. I hope you're all happy with how that went. I had a great time. I will see you tomorrow when we continue on with whatever it is tomorrow. I'll have to have a look. But yeah, thank you all so much. Thank you to Tammy and Noah for your awesome moderation. We'll do the Kahoot tomorrow. AR. The Kahoot was rigged, I agree. The Kahoot was rigged. Yeah, if we missed your question, it's not intentional. Post it on the forum. We'll get to it there. Thank you all so much. Have a great day. See, it's already 11. You've already watched a 2-hour lecture. You're killing it. Go get some more Nutella toast. See ya.